You're listening to The Jacob Valk Show. He's breaking down the latest and greatest in sports as only he can. Follow him on Twitter at RealJacobValk. Here he is, Jacob Valk.
Hello, sports fans! Welcome to another edition of the Jacob Valk Show. I am Jacob Valk, and there are actually a few pieces of sports news to talk about today. It's a welcome change of pace from just doing the Trifecta. I like doing the Trifecta, don't get me wrong, but I love talking about sports news even more, and I will start with a rumor involving Desmond King. Daniel Popper, who covers the Chargers for The Athletic, and may or may not have penguins in his house. I really hope you get that reference. Really funny movie, Mr. Popper's Penguins. I liked that movie when I was younger. Popper thinks that there's a chance that the Chargers may trade King. Desmond King is one of the better young corners in the NFL. He'd actually command a pretty decent haul. A haul better than what you probably think at first glance. In his rookie and sophomore years, he had Pro Football Focus grades of over 85. Now, granted, he took a major step back last year, but he was still getting a 69.4 overall grade, and if you watched him play, he was still pretty good. Now, he wasn't great, but he was still pretty good. See, when the Chargers signed Chris Harris, I thought it was going to be to have him play on the outside. If it was him to play in the slot, that makes no sense. King can't play on the outside. So, Popper's right that they're probably going to look to trade King. King is only 5'10". You can't put him on the outside. He'll be eaten alive. So then why did the Chargers sign Harris? It makes no sense. Why wouldn't you just draft a corner in the second round? Look, Popper's right that they're going to trade Desmond King. Assuming they trade him straight up, they're probably looking at a third-round pick. He's one of the best slot corners in the NFL. I've even heard some scenarios about the Chargers trading up to 3 using him. I mean, it makes sense in a weird way. If the Chargers are that high on Tua, they could do it. The Lions fill their cornerback need. It's going to be interesting to see what happens with King. I do think he'll be traded. I don't think the Chargers should have signed Harris. If their plan was to trade King, just pay him. Just pay Desmond King. He's younger. But regardless, the die has been cast. And King is going to get a pretty noticeable haul. Moving on now to the Chiefs, bringing in DeAndre Washington. And I usually wouldn't talk about this since we don't know the exact details of the contract. But given current circumstances, I feel like it's warranted. The Chiefs, all last year, were looking for a second running back. They tried LaShawn McCoy, and it worked for a little bit, but towards the end of the season, he flamed out. Is Damian Williams great? The answer is no. But he's been a good playoff performer for the Chiefs. In Williams' 5 playoff games with the Chiefs, he has 10 touchdowns. Williams is going to be their lead back. How much is he going to get used? Probably not that much. They have Patrick Mahomes. But you still need a running back. You can do worse than Williams. He's not great, but he's not terrible. Again, great playoff performer. But if you want a second running back, DeAndre Washington is the way to go. I always liked Washington. When he was with Oakland, he was really an afterthought, but whenever you watched him play, he looked good. In his career, he's averaged 4 yards per attempt. You know, that's pretty much what you look for from your running back. You want him to get 4 to 5 yards a carry. Now, he's not great. There's no question. But a backfield of Damian Williams, DeAndre Washington, and whoever else, that's fine. You can live with that if you're the Chiefs. They have Patrick Mahomes as their quarterback. They don't need a great running back. They don't need a great backfield. Sure, it'd be nice. Give the offense another dimension to it and make it that much more scary, but it's already scary enough with Mahomes, Hill, Kelsey, and Watkins. I like the move for the Chiefs bringing in Washington. He's a good backup running back. Damian Williams has nothing to worry about with his starting job. And the Chiefs are in good position to repeat. Not because they're signing, it's just a statement of fact. The last piece of news that I want to talk about today concerns the Bulls hiring a new executive vice president of basketball operations. And no, it is not Spencer Dinwiddie. Although he had a pretty good plan to rebuild the Bulls. That was actually pretty funny. I don't know how that's legal, though. Like, out of context, I could be taken aback by that as a Nets fan. Wait a minute, you're angling to go to the Bulls? You want to rebuild them? What? I understand it was all in good fun, and I like Dinwiddie a lot. Really smart guy. Missed his calling in life. Should have been a doctor. Should not be an NBA player. He has the brains to be a doctor. But, regardless, the Bulls have a new guy in charge, and it is Arturas Karnisovas, formerly of the Denver Nuggets. Supposedly the guy has a great reputation around the league. You had heard his name a few times before for roles around the league, and look, he ended up taking the Bulls job. It's an appealing job. For starters, you're in a huge media market in Chicago. The idea of bringing the Bulls back to their Jordan glory days is appealing. And I think Karnisovas will do a good job. I know the people all around the league are speaking very highly of him. And it seems like he's going to have full control, which is great. The tandem of Gar Forman and John Paxson had worn out their welcome in Chicago, a long time ago. The sad thing about them is they actually had a decent plan. It just wasn't executed well. Their plan was to rebuild from the ground up with young guns. They just didn't find the right guys. Chris Dunn, major bust. Larry Markkinen has had a disappointing year. Zach LaVine is really good. Would you call him great? I wouldn't call LaVine great. I understand that he averaged 25.5 points this year, but he's the best scorer on the team. No one comes anywhere close to him. Of course he's going to put up big numbers. If all the Bulls' young guns had taken the leap that LaVine did, there's no question that Zach LaVine is a million times better than he was when he was with the Timberwolves. There's no question. And if everyone else had taken that leap, Markkinen, Wendell Carter, Chris Dunn, the Bulls would be in good shape. They've been a sleeper team for one of the bottom playoff spots in the East for a while. They just never were able to get over the hump. I think the final nail in their coffin, quite honestly, was hiring Jim Boylan. Jim Boylan has not worked there. He has done a terrible job. Every single one of their young players, with the exception of LaVine, has regressed. I mean, when you have a young team, you need a coach that's going to be able to relate to them. Jim Boylan is not that guy. Jim Boylan, I think, is in his 60s. He runs an old-school offense. It doesn't fit the Bulls at all. I mean, even when he took over as interim coach, there were rumors that the players were revolting against him. How do you revolt against an interim coach? I mean, you've got to be a really bad interim coach if the players are revolting against you. And then he gets the full-time job. I was stunned when he got the full-time job. The thumb needs to go. Paxson and Foreman, Jerry Reinsdorf is a really loyal person. He kept Jerry Krause on for way too long. If he wants to keep Garpax on the payroll, I can understand that, but don't give them any say. It has to be Karnisovas, and whoever he brings in as his GM, let them make the decisions, but Karnisovas needs to have the final say. He needs to be empowered. I think he's going to be empowered. I think that Karnisovas will do a good job with the Bulls, and firing Boylan will be a really, really good start. Alright, it is time for numbers 29 to 32 on my 2020 NFL Draft Big Board. They are Kenneth Murray, T. Higgins, Zach Bond, and Trayvon Diggs. We're at the end of the first round now. Pretty interesting. And we'll start this foursome off with the hardest hitter in this draft. A guy who was born about 50 years too late. Kenneth Murray would have no problem playing alongside Jack Lambert on the Steel Curtain. That's how hard of a hitter he is. He reminds me a lot of Joey Porter. When you're going over the middle of the field, bam, you just feel his hit. I mean, some of those hits that he gave at Oklahoma, you just gotta shake your head. How did that guy get up? The knock on him is he's overly aggressive, and you don't know how that style of play is going to transition to this NFL that is really concerned about player safety. But there's still a place for old school linebackers. I really like watching Murray play. Murray is one of my favorite players to watch out of this draft class. It's going to be really fun to follow his career. And whatever team drafts him is going to have a thumper, the likes of which we haven't seen in the NFL in a long time. T. Higgins missed his calling in life. He should have been a high jumper. This kid's vertical is off the charts. I don't know what he did at the combine off the top of my head, but just watch the tape. This kid was out leaping grown men every game at Clemson. Oh, actually, I just looked it up. He didn't do the vertical at the combine. Whatever, doesn't matter. He didn't need it. I did one of those once. I forgot where, but I did do a vertical jump. It was fun. I don't remember what mine was. I'm sure it would be higher now. I've heard some people compare Higgins to A.J. Green. Green is a much better route runner than Higgins. That's the knock on Higgins. He's kind of a one-trick pony. You know, get him in single coverage and just lob the ball up to him and let him make a play. He can do that, but he's not a good route runner. He reminds me a lot of Plaxico Burress, actually. I like Higgins a lot. His athleticism is off the charts. You've got to use him correctly, though. Don't use him as a route runner. Just use him as a single coverage guy. As a deep threat, as a Robbie Anderson type. That's where he'll be the most effective. You want to tell me you're going to work on his route running with him? Good. He has the talent to get there. He has the talent to be a really good route runner in this league, but he's not going to be that overnight. It's just that simple. Zach Bourne needs to be drafted in a 4-3 defense. If he is drafted in a 3-4 defense, he will bust. He is too undersized, and he's not strong enough to make up for that. But if he is drafted in a 4-3 defense, oh my goodness, watch out. Because this guy is one of the most technically sound linebackers we've seen in a long time. I haven't really seen a good player comparison for him. I've seen Kyle Van Noy because they're both so technically sound, but Van Noy has shown that he can play in a 3-4. I don't think Bourne can. If he's drafted by a 3-4 team, he will bust. If he's drafted by a 4-3 team, watch out. Sky's the limit. Trayvon Diggs is, without question, the rawest prospect in this draft. But when you look at him, he just looks like an NFL corner. He's the younger brother of Stephon Diggs. I like the fact that he has good genes. Great height, great length, great weight, great strength. Really the prototypical cornerback prospect. The thing is, though, he just needs seasoning. If you put him out there week 1 against a guy like DeAndre Hopkins or Odell Beckham or Michael Thomas, he'll get eaten alive. But if you use him correctly, start him out in dime sets and then ease him into an outside corner role, you've got yourselves a really talented player. He needs coaching, and that's okay. Realize, I have him at 32. You're not going to take a guy at 32 and immediately expect him to be a Pro Bowler. It'd be nice, but He's got to be brought along slowly. It's the same case with Diggs. There is such a thing as being drafted by the wrong team. Hopefully, Diggs isn't. And Bourne, too, for that matter. Alright, it's time for this day in sports history. On this day, in 2001, one of the most beloved players in MLB history by his teammates and his opponents, Willie Stargell, passed away from a stroke. When we talk about guys who players would run through a brick wall for, that was Stargell. Al Oliver had a great quote about him, and I'll paraphrase it. If he asked us to jump off a bridge, we'd ask him what kind of dive he wanted. Without question, Willie Stargell was one of the most charismatic leaders to ever play a baseball game. This guy was built like Bo Jackson. He was that strong. Instead of warming up with a bat in the on-deck circle, he'd use a sledgehammer. The kind of guy who I'd want backing me up in a bar fight. In fact, it got to the point where in 1968, yeah, Stargell had a bad year. He only hit .237, but he had made 3 All-Star teams before that. I know I just took a giant leap, but run with me on this. 64, 65, 66, he hit over 20 home runs each year and hit over 75 RBIs each year. Never had a batting average worse than .272. Made the first of his 3 All-Star teams that year. 67, didn't make an All-Star team, but still played well. .271 with 20 homers and 73 RBIs. The Pirates manager was a man by the name of Larry Shepard. And Larry Shepard was not a good manager. He picked a fight with Stargell. You're not going to win that fight. No one's going to back you up there. Now look, Shepard had a point that Stargell was having a bad year in 68. He only hit .237. 24 homers, 67 RBIs. Yeah, I like the 24 homers, but the 67 RBIs I don't like. And the .237 average is dreadful. Shepard complained that Stargell was too muscular. The personal trainer that the team had hired didn't do its job. But Stargell rebounded the year after by hitting .307 with 29 homers and 92 RBIs. In the early 70s, when the Pirates were really, really good, even great, Stargell was dominant. Would hit 30 homers and 80 RBIs like that. Made the All-Star team, almost won the MVP 3 times. And in 71 and 73, he won the home run title. He also won the RBI title in 73. Stargell was also a 40-40 man in 73 by hitting 43 doubles. You may wonder why I'm glossing over the playoffs for those years in the early to mid-70s. The simple fact is, Stargell really wasn't that good. From 1970 to 1975 in the playoffs, he only hit .217, 2 homers, 7 RBIs. Yeah, the Pirates won the World Series in 1971, but it wasn't because of Stargell. It was because of guys like Roberto Clemente, Manny Sanguillen, Jose Pagan had a good series. Their pitching was otherworldly with Steve Blass, Nelson Bryles, Bruce Keeson had 2 good games in relief. Dave Justy, too, was a good reliever that year in the World Series. Not Stargell. That was a knock on him. Great in the regular season. Wasn't good in the playoffs. That all changed in 1979. When, after some lackluster Pirates years, Stargell was still having good seasons, but in 79, the Pirates took it to another level. They adopted We Are Family by Sister Sledge. Stargell hit .281 with 32 homers and 82 RBIs, won the MVP in the regular season, the NLCS, and the World Series. He is the only player to have won regular season MVP, LCS MVP, and World Series MVP in the same season. After that, though, he got hurt a lot, hung around a little too long. The Pirates did him dirty by not naming him manager. He really, really wanted to be a manager. He was a hitting coach in the minors. He actually coached Chipper Jones. Look, I'm not saying he should have been manager, but he should have at least been considered. Give him an interview. Give him a coaching job. It took a long time for that bridge to be mended, but it was. As 2 days before he died, a huge, huge, huge statue of him was unveiled at PNC Park. A great tribute to a great man. Alright, it's time for another Mount Rushmore. We're on the LA Dodgers now, a team with the richest pitching history in baseball history. I mean, you're going to hear the Mount Rushmore in a minute, but there are pitchers that I left off that you could make a Mount Rushmore of, and it would be better than some of the Mount Rushmores I've already done. But the correct Mount Rushmore is Sandy Koufax, Don Drysdale, Don Sutton, and Zach Wheat. Just to finish my first point, Clayton Kershaw, Fernando Valenzuela, Oral Hershiser, Johnny Padres, Dazzy Vance, Brickyard Kennedy. Pick any 4 of those guys, you've got a great Mount Rushmore there. I know what you're thinking. How could I leave Kershaw off? The guy is probably the most dominant pitcher we have right now. Well, see, in order to be great, you have to stay healthy. And Clayton Kershaw, the past 4 years, has never pitched more than 180 innings. And in the playoffs, he's been disastrous. 9-11 with a 4.43 ERA. That's your ace? You want him on that Mount Rushmore? Look, I understand that Clayton Kershaw is probably a future Hall of Famer. And I'm not taking anything away from him. He's a great pitcher. And he was really close to being on this Mount Rushmore. If you wanted to put him on yours, I'd understand it. But I can't put him on mine. Sandy Koufax and Don Drysdale, do you really need me to tell you how dominant they were? In the 60s, they led the Dodgers to 3 World Series. And of course, we all know that Koufax wouldn't pitch on Yom Kippur. Got a lot of heat for that. But he stuck to his guns, I give him credit. It's one of the biggest what-ifs in sports history. If Sandy Koufax had pitched until he was 40, how great would his career stats be? He pitched until he was 30, and his career stats are 165 and 87 with 2,396 strikeouts. He'd have 300 wins easily. He'd have 3,000 strikeouts in 3 years. He may have even had 4,000 strikeouts. Him and Mickey Mantle, I feel like, are the 2 biggest guys who I wish had stayed healthy all throughout their baseball career. Drysdale, obviously, the Robin to Koufax's Batman, but he could have just as easily have been Batman. Second in wins and strikeouts by Dodgers pitchers. Don Sutton is first in those categories. Really shouldn't have left before the 81 season. Because it would have been nice to have seen him win a World Series with the Dodgers. I mean, not nice because they beat the Yankees in 81, but it's just sad that a pitcher as great as Sutton never won a World Series. And Zach Wheat, I already told you about him in a This Day in Sports History. I don't want to repeat it. If you want to learn more about him, listen to the March 11th show. The one thing I'll say is, though, he was a very colorful character. Finished with 2,804 hits as a Dodger. That is by far and away the lead. If you want to put Kershaw ahead of Wheat, you just don't know your history. It's just that simple. Tomorrow, it's more of the same. Maybe some sports news. Definitely the Trifecta. Until then, I am Jacob Valk saying, how do you spell Offerman? An O, 2 F's, and 50 E's.